Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third video on externalities. And in this video, we're going to be diving into some of the details associated with markets and decisions that have positive externalities. So in the last video, we mentioned some of the details associated with negative externalities and how in those, decisions or markets that involve negative externalities, almost too much of the good or the people making a certain decision that involves a negative externality happens too often because people don't realize how costly their actions are on other people. What we'll find with positive externalities, on the other hand, is that not enough people are making the decision to engage in behaviors or markets that involve positive externalities. So I guess we could start this video by talking about, what are some examples of different positive externalities that exist. One of the major examples that is used in economics classes to teach about positive externalities is vaccines. So being vaccinated against a contagious disease not only protects you as an individual, but it also protects everyone around you from getting that disease as well. So your private actions not only benefit you, but it benefits everyone around you. That would be considered a positive externality. Social distancing during a pandemic could also be seen as having a positive externality. So by staying home, you're not only benefiting yourself from, potentially not getting infected, but you're having a positive impact on everyone around you. Everyone around you is also less likely to get infected during a pandemic if you personally decide to social distance. A couple of other examples of, decisions that or markets that involve positive externalities. Research and development creates knowledge that others can use. So if a private individual, or a private firm decides to invest in research or develop new technology, not only does this benefit that private individual or the private company, but it also benefits everyone else that could potentially use that research or that technology. It benefits them because, it enhances not only the business, but everyone. And also another example of positive externalities, there have been studies done that show that people that go to college raise the population's education level, which has been shown to reduce crime and improves government outcomes. So if, you going to college not only benefits you, but it also benefits everyone around you, in your neighborhood, in your community, because there have been studies that show that more college educated people is associated with less crime, and it also improves the quality of government outcomes and decision making as well. So these are all different examples of what could be considered a positive externality. The private decisions of individuals and businesses have a positive impact on the people around them. Now, I'm going to be using the social distancing during a pandemic as a direct example of a positive externality. So if you'll remember in the last video, the negative externality example that I used was not social distancing. A positive externality, what I'll be using in this video, is actually social distancing. And then in the later part of the video, I'll be going through another example that uses vaccines as, again, another example of, the economics surrounding positive externalities. So again, people that make individual private decisions only consider the private benefits and the private costs associated with that decision. And let's say that the decision that we want to analyze in this example is whether or not to actually stay home and social distance. Now, there could be some private benefits to an individual to stay home and social distance. Mainly those benefits could probably be seen in there's less of a chance of, that person personally getting COVID-19. So if they decide to stay home and social distance, they're less likely to be infected with COVID-19. The, private cost to that individual could be a number of different things. So the cost of social distancing could be potentially losing their job and not earning an income. Again, potentially not being able to see friends or do activities that, make you feel normal or whatever. So to make the private decision whether or not to social distance, that person is going to weigh these private benefits and these private costs. So if the benefits to social distancing outweigh the private costs, this person will stay home and they will social distance. If, however, the costs to this private individual are greater than the private benefits that they get from staying home, then this person will be more likely to not social distance and go out and potentially work or see friends or whatever. So again, this private individual is only going to be considering the private benefits and the private costs to them personally. They're not going to take into account in their personal cost-benefit analysis the social benefits that could come about from them staying home. So these social benefits would be, there's less of a chance of overwhelming the healthcare system, which causes high mortality rates. There's less of a chance of potentially infecting someone who cannot easily, recover from COVID-19. So again, these social benefits to social distancing are much, much greater than any kind of private benefits that one single person is going to think about. So, because the social benefits are so much greater to, have an outcome in society that is, socially beneficial or, socially desirable, we would want more people actually staying home and social distancing. But because, people only consider the private benefit that they get from social distancing, there may be a number of people where, these costs are much bigger than the private benefits that they're going to get. So they personally decide that they're not going to social distance. And again, we talked about in the last video, there could be, again, adverse effects from people not social distancing. So to, again, reach a more socially desirable outcome, more people should be staying home to reach the socially beneficial outcome. So again, because people are not internalizing these big benefits, there is potentially a place for the government to step in and try to correct what is happening in this private decision or this private market. So if people on their own, weighing the costs and benefits of social distancing, if people on their own are not internalizing the fact that their decision has this positive externality, the government could actually, help them realize that they could be helping a lot of people by staying home if they subsidize people to stay home. So if the government directly pays you to stay home, during this COVID-19 pandemic, it may, make you less likely to go out or want to go work or want to go out and be active, potentially infecting other people. So if the government were to, let's say, subsidize individuals to stay home, then the private benefit of staying home increases with that subsidy, right? Not only do you have a less chance of personally getting COVID-19, but if you stay home, you also get money. And this makes it more likely that your private benefits are going to be bigger than the private costs. So, to help with positive externality decisions and markets, the government could subsidize people to make the decision that is socially beneficial. So something that's also kind of cool that, us as economists, we can use like our supply and demand model to analyze these different externality markets. But instead of, having demand as downward sloping and supply as upward sloping, we can just call these different graphs, the private benefits. It's kind of like the demand, and the private cost would be the supply. So we can use this kind of graphical analysis of private benefits and private costs to analyze these externality markets. Now we can do the same thing with negative externalities, but I thought this would be a really useful kind of illustration of another type of positive externality. And another type of positive externality that we can talk about during this pandemic is not only social distancing, but also vaccines. So let's say in the near future that a pharmaceutical company develops a COVID-19 vaccine and makes it available for, everyone to get vaccinated. So there is a private benefit and a private cost to getting vaccinated. And let's say that, in this example here, I wanted to try to put a dollar amount on this benefit to make it a little bit easier to graph in the picture. So let's just assume that there is some kind of extra external social benefit to a private individual getting vaccinated. So again, this private individual not only benefits from getting vaccinated, but there is this $10 social benefit that exists for each vaccine that's given. So if we were to go through and graph this kind of example that I'm giving, so we can see that in this example that the private benefit to getting vaccinated in this case is not as large as the social benefit to getting vaccinated. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, I put a, $10 a vaccine social benefit, this extra benefit to society if you get vaccinated. So we can see that if we compare, the private benefit to the social benefit, we see that the social benefit is much larger than the private benefit curve by the vertical distance of this external benefit. So I said that it was $10 a vaccine. So at every single point on this private benefit curve, the social benefits to getting vaccinated are $10 higher than the private benefit. So if we look at, just the private individual's decision to get vaccinated against COVID-19, that private individual is only going to look at the private benefits and the private costs. So as you can see here, if we look at private benefits and private costs, we'll see that they are equal at an amount of 20. So in this certain society, in this community, if we allow private individuals to come to this decision on their own, there will be 20 people vaccinated. If, however, we take into account that each person that gets vaccinated adds this $10 benefit to society, maybe in terms of, people having to pay less for their health care and etc., we see that if people took that social benefit into account and their private costs, 25 people would actually be vaccinated. So again, the private outcome for a positive externality, this private equilibrium, is less than what the social equilibrium should be. If people are left to make private decisions, 20 people will get vaccinated. But if those people, if people making the decision to get vaccinated also took into account the $10 external benefit, 25 people would get vaccinated. So the socially optimal level of vaccines is 25. So how do we get to this socially optimal outcome? So again, just like in the last example I gave with social distancing, not enough people, if we allow them to make their private benefit cost analysis, not enough people will choose to social distance. So to make people actually internalize that benefit, the government could subsidize people to stay home. In this case, to get people to internalize the external benefit of getting vaccinated, the government could impose a subsidy of $10 a vaccine. So if you go to the pharmacy or wherever, the hospital, to get vaccinated for COVID-19, the government could essentially pay you $10 if you choose to do that. Now, if the government imposed a policy like this, you would expect a lot more people would actually go out and get a vaccine versus if there was no kind of external kind of reward for engaging in this decision that has a positive externality. But by implementing this policy, more people will go out and get vaccinated, which is a good thing for society in this analysis. So again, we can kind of substitute demand and supply with benefits and costs to analyze these different markets or different decisions that have externalities. You won't specifically have to do this for a test. You mainly just have to, be able to think through the logic of, private decision making versus the optimal social outcome. So in the last and final video for externalities, we're going to be kind of summarizing all of the different public policies associated with externalities, and also talk about some private solutions that may exist in externality markets.